In this video, we're going to be on page Word 64 and 65, which is talking about adding borders and shading. Borders and shading can add color and a splash to your document. Borders are lines you add above, below, to the side, or around words or paragraphs. You can format borders using different line styles, colors, and widths. Shading is a color or pattern you apply behind words or paragraphs to make them stand out on a page. You apply borders and shading using the Borders button and the Shading button in the Paragraph group on the Home tab. So if we look at step 1 on page Word 64 and we press our Control Home key, that's going to get us back up to the top of the document. And then it tells us to scroll down until our tab text here should be at the top of our document right here, or at the top of our screen. Then it tells us in step 2 that we want to select the 5 paragraphs of tab text. So we select this right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on the shading list arrow, which looks like a little paint bucket right here. And it's in the paragraph group. And when we click on this, on the list arrow next to it, notice that we have some of our different theme colors as well as our standard colors. And what we're going to click on is, we're going to click on the blue accent 1 lighter 60% color. So we can take a look here, and there's our blue accent 1. And then we can move down this way, and this will tell us the different colorations. And so right there it is, the blue accent 1 lighter 60%. It's in the 5th column, and it's the 3rd row down. And when we click on that, notice that there's a blue color behind our paragraph. And if we deselect it, we can fully see that block of text that we've selected has now got some shading behind it. And it applies to the entire width of the paragraph despite all of our tab settings, because even though our tabs are here, here, and here, it goes to the full width from margin to margin. In step 3, it tells us that we're going to reselect back the 5 lines of tab text here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drag the left indent marker to the 3/4 inch mark, or the 3/4 inch mark on the horizontal ruler. So we click on the little box, that's the box down here, and we're going to click and drag this all the way over to the 3/4 inch. Now notice that when we indented it, our shading moved as well. Then it tells us we're going to drag the right indent marker to the 5 3/4 inch mark, which is right here, and notice that it moves that as well. And then it tells us to deselect the text. Of course, the shading for the paragraph is indented from the left and right, which makes it look more attractive. On step 4, we're going to reselect the 5 paragraphs here of tab text, and we're going to click on the bottom border list arrow. And this button is kind of a multi-use button. Right now it's bottom border, but we're going to click on this list arrow, and notice that it gives us different options for all of our different borders. And on this one, it tells us that we're going to click outside borders. And now notice that we have a border that has appeared around this text. And then if we deselect it, there we can see a black outside border is added around the selected text. You can use the borders list arrow to add a border above, below, to the side of, or around the selected text, among many other options. The style of the border added is the most recently used border style, and in this case it's the default, which is a thin black line. In step 5, it tells us that we're going to reselect back the 5 lines of tab text again. And now, in this case, we're going to click on the outside borders list arrow. And notice how I told you that this is a multi-use button. The name of the button actually changes depending on what you've used. But when we click on the list arrow here, we're going to go ahead and click on No Border. And notice that makes the border disappear. But then we're going to go right back and click on the No Border List button, which is the same list button that we have been using, and we're going to go down here to the very bottom of Borders and Shading. And this brings up the Borders and Shading dialog box on there. And you can use this to change the border style, color, width, and to add boxes and lines to words or other paragraphs. In step 6, it tells us that we're going to click the box. And it seems a little bit funny, but right over here underneath the setting, we're going to click on this one right here that says box. And notice that these become highlighted, showing that we're going to have one on top, one on the bottom, to the left, and to the right of our information. And then it tells us that we're going to scroll down the style on here, because there's some different styles that's there, until we see a double line, which is this one right here. And we're going to click on that. Then we're going to go down to the color list arrow, and right now it says automatic, but we're going to change this to dark blue text 2. So we can take a look here, and there it is at the very top, fourth column over, dark blue text 2. And then finally what we're going to do on this step, on step 6, we're going to click the with list arrow, and we're going to change this half point here to 1.5 point. And you'll notice that this preview is showing a little bit about what the border is going to look like. Once we have that, we're going to go ahead and click on OK and deselect our text so we can take a look at our border that we have now. Of course, when creating custom borders, it's important to select the style, color, and width settings before applying the borders in the preview section. In step 7, it tells us that we want to reselect back the 5 paragraphs here again of tab text. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on the bold on there. So we're making all the text bold. And then we're going to change the color on here. And it tells us that we're going to click on the font color list arrow, which is over here. And we're going to change this to dark blue text 2, which is once again the fourth column, first row. And then tells us to deselect the text. So you notice that how this text is starting to stand out just a little bit more. In step 8 on the page, it tells us to select the first line of the tab text, which is trip, dates, and cost. And then we're going to click on the launcher in the font group. So here we are in the font group. We click on the launcher and that brings up our font dialog box. And it says click the font tab if it's not the active tab, which hopefully it should be. And that should be the tab right there. And then it tells us that we want to click 14 in the size list box. So we have to scroll down one and click on 14. Notice the changes are going to be down here in this preview. Then we're going to click the font color list arrow, which is right here, and it should be that blue color that we selected. And it tells us we want to click on red accent 2 on there. And that is in the 6th column, first row, right there. We click on that. Notice the color changes down here as well. And then finally, we're going to click on the small caps check box here in the effects. And notice how even the lowercase letters appear to be capital letters, but they're still lowercase. Once we have that, we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And then we can deselect our text, and we can take a look at our text and see how this is, because the text in the first line of the tab text is enlarged and changed to small red caps. And when you change the text to small caps, the lowercase letters are changed to uppercase letters in a smaller font size. Of course, in addition, remember that if you're working with text in here, you can always highlight this by using this highlighter button right up here. And you can change the colors of that, and this information you can see on Word page 65. Just remember that highlighting does not print on your document. And that concludes the information that's on pages Word 64 and 65, working with adding borders and shading. You may now move on to the final video, which is working with adding footnotes and endnotes.